dat je luistert naar een nieuwe aflevering van Paul de Vries vanuit de podcaststudio in Ede met de missie de online automotive beter te maken. Dit doet Paul met de volgende partners met dezelfde missie. Marktplaats, Goldrip, Carmen Automotive BDC, Vindio, Used Car Controller, Vinnacles en tweedehands.be.
Welkom allemaal bij een nieuwe aflevering van onze podcast met de missie de online automotive beter maken. En vandaag gaan we dat doen in het Engels, want we hebben namelijk een gast uit de UK, Andy Shields van INDICATA, waar we het gaan hebben over de gebruikte automarkt, over de elektrische automarkt, zowel nieuw als gebruikt, wat Tesla heeft gedaan. En we gaan het hebben over de omloopsnelheid van auto's en hoe je dat met data kan zien, hoe dat beter kan. Andy, welcome to our studio in Ede.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Of course. And people in Holland don't know you, but they obviously know INDICATA. But can you talk something about yourself, where you're coming from, and where your passion is, and what you're doing at INDICATA?
So a little bit about me. I'm 57. I've been in the automotive industry for 30 odd years. How dare I say that? I'm a Liverpool supporter. Get that in first, because I think you're going to talk about Everton at some point. My background, I started working with a car manufacturer many years ago. Probably the main part of my career was as director of fleet and remarketing for Avis Europe. So really focusing on the 11 countries that we owned, buying a couple of 100,000 cars a year, remarketing those cars at the end of the life, residual value planning, all those sorts of activities. I spent a little bit of time working for getting my .com startup badge, working for an online retailer, which we kind of grew from 300 cars to 1,000 cars a month.
But that was back in 2007, right?
2007, 2008. Great time to set up a business in the middle of the financial crisis.
Yeah, but,
hey-ho.
But in that time, you actually had still some conversations with dealers that you have to explain what the internet can do for them.
Well, primarily this was working with the leasing companies, with the daily rental companies, selling direct to consumers. So we weren't focusing on working with dealers. In reality, we were going in competition with dealers. So in the same way as the likes of Kazoo and Havana and whatever we're doing, we were probably did that 10 years beforehand. So an interesting challenge, but I learnt a lot about vehicle pricing, getting the right price into the market. Stock management is really key in that environment. It was just.
It's all about the turn, right?
It's about the turn, but making a margin out of the turn. Because you can turn, but if you're not making a margin, it doesn't matter.
No, of course, then no. But on the other end, if you're not getting a margin at the first day, you are not getting a margin at the 40th day, right?
Absolutely. We do training sessions, and the start session is, all cars depreciate. Margins are thin to start off with, but if you leave it in stock, eventually you'll get very slim margins, and actually if it goes past 90, 120 days, kiss goodbye to your margins. So it is about the turn. It's about making
honest,
sure. Yeah.
If you're honest to yourself.
Honest. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and then?
So I did that for a period of time, and then I moved in to set up my own consulting business. So I did a number of things. I worked when Spiker bought out Saab was my first contract. And
Spiker?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. Interesting times. But from my point of view, a fascinating consultancy project, looking at the clashes of cultures between a Dutch company and a Swedish company, looking at the challenges of moving it forward. I was initially went in there to set up the European fleet sales operations, but very quickly got very much more involved in the finance side of the business and dealer funding and setting up the stocking lines and that sort of thing. So a really, really interesting project, and that kind of made me decide that I wanted to stay in the consulting. So I carried on doing various bits of work, either working for...
But about Spiker,
Yeah.
Maybe a nasty question.
Go on.
But did you get all your invoices paid? Eventually.
It
Nice
was
for
nerve-wracking
you.
at times,
Yeah,
but
I can
eventually I
imagine.
got all my invoices
Good
paid.
for you. Good for you. But the consultancy space was something what you actually also like, because all your experience came together, right?
It was great. A wonderful opportunity to work in a number of different areas. I've got a low threshold of boredom, so to be working on a project for a period of time, looking at buying a distributor in the Middle East, to then work at setting up a leasing company for Volkswagen Financial Services, to then working with a car manufacturer setting up used car programs.
Yeah.
I was really fortunate in the work that I got and the variety of the work that I got. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, and was probably not expecting to move back into corporate life until one of my clients, Autorola now, INDICATA, the division I work for, Peter, our chief executive, asked me to do some consulting for me, and I got hooked.
Yeah.
And then he asked me to join the company, and here I am.
Good for you.
3-4 years later, still here, still growing the business. So it's good.
Yeah. So you are responsible for all global INDICATA business, right?
So effectively, INDICATA operates in 13 European countries at the moment. I look after the sales teams across all of the countries, but equally I'm responsible for the scraping activities. So we have 2,300 robots scraping 11 million cars every single day, bringing that data into our databases, using AI to analyze it, understand it, put together not just pricing but market trends. So we have a robot team, we have a catalog team. I have a team of data analysts that then work on bespoke reporting within that, and then on top of that we have an IT development team who keep it all hanging together and up and running, and the next stage of development. Yeah,
about that scraping part and that warehouse part. I can imagine that, for example, in Fiat 500, or maybe that's a wrong example. Just a normal regular car, a Clio or something. It's just a Clio. It's just black, and it's the pairing with the 2018 and 2018. Just a Clio. But I can imagine if you are scraping thousands of Audis.
Yeah,
and those are very important. What the sky trim is, black or white or whatever. It makes a huge impact on the value of the car.
Yeah.
How can you make that happen? That you see that difference on those details, right?
I give an example. When you're taking data from the internet, you just take the text data from the internet. Very few vehicle adverts actually contain the model year, what the facelift is. So you can look at, let's say, 2 BMW 120 diesels, and they're described exactly the same year of registration, same mileage, but they'll be different model years.
Yeah.
So how do you resolve that? Well, we spent over 3 million euros on putting an AI system in that takes the photographs, and we can actually recognize the model year of the vehicle by the shape of the headlights, the position of the fog lights, and resolve down to that granularity of detail, so that we're constantly getting the data right. You talked about kind of the optional equipment element to it. We have two methodologies. A lot of websites have got a standard structure in terms of how they describe the options. But because we're scraping so many, it's not always done in that structured way. No. So things like air conditioning can be described as aircon, climatization, A/C, A/con. So we have a whole load of algorithms that are, again, able to take that free text in, resolve it down, categorize it, and bring it together, so that we can then take that data in. And particularly when you get into things like option packs with the premium brands. So a luxury pack for BMW 3 Series of a particular model year in one country will be completely different from the luxury pack of a BMW 3 Series in another country. So we're able to take that individual specification data in, and that then means that we have the ability to manage and control and price not just the options, but really understand if a car has been moved from one country to another country, what's it really worth in that country, so we can help people with both with the
taxation,
with all that sort of stuff. Okay. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay. In the conversation we had before, of course, this is the first time we actually met. We had a very good conversation from 30 minutes ago, and you show me some data about electric cars.
Yep.
So I want to say blunt, I'm not a big fan of electric cars. I don't want to say I hate them, but the way they are a political weapon, I don't like. I have to choose my own car. I don't want the government is choosing my car, right? On the other hand, everybody's talking about if you have no electric cars whatsoever, you are dead in the waters, etc. But you show me interesting data that maybe the electric car at this moment is dead in the waters because there is oversupply and no demand. Can you emphasize on that more?
It's been interesting. I mean, we all know that we've been through a period for kind of like 2021, 2022 of very, very tight supply.
Yes.
And I think and that's been across all fuel types, internal combustion engine, battery electric vehicles, hybrids, all very similar. As we've moved into, let's say, 2022, particularly with the chip shortage, you've then seen that there's been quite an incredible, from the new car perspective, shortage in battery electric vehicles, and lead times went out kind of 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months on a number of manufacturers' cars. And that then put it sucked a lot of cars out also from the used car market because customers weren't prepared to wait that long. And so we saw extreme tight supply
on both ends, right?
On
new cars, used cars.
New car on the used car. So extremely tight supply, and we saw prices rising on battery electric vehicles, etc. Now, what's interesting is as we've moved forward and the market is beginning to ease across the total market, and specifically, I'm looking at the internal combustion engine. It's gone from extreme tight supply, it's coming back to a new normal level. It's not oversupply. The market is easing. The balance is coming back to where it needs to be. But it's interesting. We've been tracking the battery electric vehicle stocks within dealers and looking
new and used,
primarily used. So really focused on the used. And we've seen kind of over 2022. Stability until a sudden step change came in around about September, October time. And since then, what we've seen is the used car stock of battery electric vehicles within dealers across the whole of Europe, in some cases doubling and in some sectors trebling. So really, we've gone from a very undersupply situation to a very free supply situation.
Massive oversupply.
Well, the question is it massive oversupply? Because I think the thing that we work on is this concept of market day supply. We're always focused on what's the supply side, but also what is the demand side. And we balance, so we've got to get into understanding that. So stocks can rise, but if at the end of the day there's a commensurate increase in demand and the ratio between stock and supply, the market day supply stays stable, then the world is good, and that's fine. Prices will remain stable.
If you turn them fast.
If you turn them fast, and it's good. So the question has been for us, whilst we've seen these stocks rise, have we seen a commensurate increase in the sales rate now that the market has gone from an undersupply situation? Supply is there. If the consumer was really, really demanding these cars, you'd see the sales rate increase at the point that the supply becomes free.
And they don't.
And it hasn't happened. It hasn't happened to the same level. I mean, it's drifted up. It's like 20% up. But
what happened in September then? Because I saw in all your slides that something happened in September, and I can emphasize on that one. We saw on at Marktplaats as well. The demand was falling and supply is going up.
Yeah. So I think the first mover was in and around Tesla across the market. We saw them in the September period taking this sudden step up in terms of the volume that they've had a number of deals with leasing companies where they've gone into some element of residual value security, if I put it that way, not necessarily buyback, but underwriting some of the residual values, etc. And that gave, I think, a lot of the leasing companies confidence to then go and lease out a car which at the demand was at the time had really strong demand, etc. So we initially saw that kind of kick up because all of a sudden the volumes from of returns that were coming back from the leasing industry, etc., from Tesla was going up. At the same time as free supply was also coming back into, from the new car perspective, coming back into the market.
So that move, what Tesla was made, actually the entering finally the car business instead of the software business.
Correct. Yeah. So all of a sudden, the realities of having to balance supply and demand, look at overstocking, all the challenges. I think we all know the job is an easy one.
No.
When actually there's a queue of customers out the door and you've got a limited amount of stock.
Yeah. And with a lot of competitors now.
Yeah, and with a lot of competitors. So we're seeing, and at this stage, it's the other manufacturers, European manufacturers, that are bringing in supply into the market. It's going to be interesting because we look more and more at the number of the Chinese players who are going to be coming in, and they're going to be coming in with some really good product, really, really good product.
Yeah, but can it be a good product without a brand image?
I think if you probably the analogy I'd look at is, let's say, the entry into the market of the Koreans. When the Koreans first came to market, it was a sort of product and whatever. Yeah. The Chinese, and they've then completely revamped their brand image on the back of good product.
Yeah.
Now I look at the Chinese and you look at the product that they've got. It's good product. So they're going to come to market with good, well-priced product, and that's going to be attractive enough for them to get a brand presence, as far as I'm concerned.
With 26 brands entering the market.
Yeah, there are going to be some winners and losers, but there's also going to be, a lot of people putting a lot of different product in the market and wanting to gain share. So again, it puts a pressure.
It's going to be pressured, but on the other hand, I see the political landscape as well.
Yeah.
That China in the coming years will not be our friend political wise, and everything coming out of China is not stamped as friendly.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what that is, what that looks like going forward. I think the only thing that and there's going to be some positives, some negatives, but overall, I think what we're seeing at the moment, and I think the key thing to kind of revert back to what we were talking about before, is how quickly is the consumer responding to their desire to have battery electric vehicles, because we've seen some growth. On the new car side, we've seen some growth. But not in
comparison with the supply you have.
Correct.
Yeah.
But then what we're seeing now is, from a used car perspective, as the new car suppliers come through and the lead times have been dropping down from 9 months to 6 months to 3 months to, we've got some stock, we've got to move it. All of a sudden, the attractiveness of used car battery electric vehicles is going down.
Yeah.
And we're seeing this now massive increase in stock levels that's happening across Europe.
Steeds meer collega's gebruiken Used Car Controller. Taxeren, calculeren, publiceren of auto's verhandelen met je persoonlijke handelsplatform? Met 1 abonnement geeft Used Car Controller je controle over alle kritische gebruikte autoprocessen. Zo maakt Used Car Controller je tot de beste in je vak. Vindio is de merkonafhankelijke automotive partner. Vindio is er voor uw klanten en u. Zo kunt u zorgeloos ondernemen en uw rendement verbeteren. Vinnacles, de leverancier van ondersteunende diensten voor de automotive. Denk hierbij aan garage- en fleet management systemen, RDW-diensten, occasion remarketing, voertuigdata en import- en exportdienstverlening. Uw online leads opvolgen binnen 30 seconden? Dat kan met CallDrip. Vraag direct een demo aan.
Yeah, but is that also because they are paying so much for the car in the used car market and actually didn't believe that the used car should be depreciated, and now they have to depreciate the car if they want to move?
I think can we just time out? I just need to understand that question again a little bit better.
No, if you see the stock levels, and if you see that the used car market or the used car trader is paying too much for the used car because he thought that there was no supply whatsoever.
Yep.
And now with stock coming back on the new cars, they actually had to depreciate the car to move it.
Yeah.
And the last 2 years, they actually believe that the used car is going up in price instead of going down in price.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think overall there's been a philosophy of whatever you can get hold of, buy, because it's going to fly out the door. It's all going to be good. Yeah. And if it doesn't fly out the door quickly, well, actually, it's going to be worth more in 3 months' time anyway. So why worry about it? And the whole underlying economics of the motor industry got turned on the head for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Guess what? We're back to the old normal. On that front, and
we
therefore
have to go back to basics.
Yeah, we've got to come back to basics. You've got to be very selective about the stock that you buy. You've got to actually not just kind of look at it and say, "Oh, this is the price of the car," but you've got to look at it in terms of, is this car going to be a worthwhile car to stock? Is it going to sell quickly? Can I buy it at the right price? Can I sell it at the right price? And if I'm not able to do that, then I don't want to buy the car. Whereas before, that decision-making process for the last 2 years. I want to say it was an easy job. It wasn't. Yeah. The motor industry is never easy, but it was a hell of a lot easier
to sell the cars. And if you talk to salespeople, they believed they were pushing the needle.
There's a lot of stars out there. Yeah. There's a lot of stars out there. But
on the other hand, the price decrease of Tesla new. Yeah, you can see it in the INDICATA data directly.
Yes. Yeah. So
it shifts.
So what we initially saw was Tesla, and this is before the price reduction. So going back to kind of October, November time, we started seeing the battery electric vehicle market, and Tesla in particular, taking a step down, and a market step down. So we normally expect a life cycle drift and whatever. But all of a sudden we're seeing month-on-month price reductions of 3%, 4%, 5%. And that's interesting. And then on the used market. And then as you then progressed, we started seeing that begin to influence the other premium OEMs, and then they begin to have some level of drift. Not quite as much. They weren't totally anchored into the Tesla. It's interesting as we moved into January, and that's where Tesla took its big price drop overall. We've seen the two things happen. One is we've seen the fact that the prices on Tesla have continued in their trajectory. They haven't taken a bigger step down. They've continued on the trajectory that they had before. But
so not massively going down.
So significantly going down, but not at an accelerated rate as a result of the price reduction that they had. But it varies by market, where we've seen probably about a kind of a 8, 9, 10% reduction in the Dutch market. We've seen a 15%, 16% reduction in the UK market over this time period. So really quite significant drops down. So we saw that. But what's been really interesting is actually markets come into free supply. Tesla's brought its pricing down, as has, in terms of the used car stock, the other manufacturers. And they're also now moved into this free supply. Have we seen a commensurate increase in the sales rate of battery electric vehicles? And the interesting thing is, in Tesla, yes, actually, we're seeing that their stock levels are beginning to stabilize, and we're beginning to see that their sales rates are beginning to increase.
So it's working for them.
So it's working for them at the moment. But my God, they've taken a lot of pain in the process of bringing their prices down,
of course,
to stimulate that customers to come to them. They've gained market share. They haven't necessarily grown the market, but they've gained market share.
But on the other hand, you always have to be afraid for the company who can give the milk for free to sell the cow. And that's what they are doing.
Yeah, in a way, we were talking before about kind of that all of a sudden they've got to learn the used car market. Maybe they have done faster than anybody else, because we had an old phrase in the rental industry: your first loss is your best loss. Yeah. I.e., if the market is on a downward way, you probably need to start taking some action sooner rather than later. Sitting there going, well, I'll hold out is never a great idea in a market that is in the wrong trajectory. But it's interesting to then look at the other premium manufacturers, Audi, Mercedes, etc. They are now going into some strong price drops. But what we're not necessarily seeing is that their sales rate is actually increasing. And that's worrying, because that says that actually maybe they've got again a little bit more of a sustained route down in terms of their residual values. And I think it's interesting this upkick that we had over the last couple of years in residual values for battery electric vehicles has been a unique thing. I go back in the data all the way back to 2015, where we have been comparing the prices of battery electric versus internal combustion engines as part of our kind of forecasting, residual value forecasting work that we've been doing just recently. And there has been, if I look at the life cycle decay on internal combustion engine vehicles, just the numbers that we calculate, I won't go into the detail, but we've been looking at kind of 2.5% per year, inflation adjusted, etc. On internal combustion. We've been looking at kind of 4.5%, 5% on battery electric vehicles. So there's been a kind of separation in trajectory.
And they're not all going to normal.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden it's kind of like it came back together very quickly over the 21-22 period, and now it's separating back off. Now I think we've had a step change, but I think we actually, from our point of view, we still see this trajectory over a long, much more sustained period on battery electric vehicles will continue going forward because of the supply-demand ratios that are there, because of technology pricing, et cetera, coming through. Whereas we are looking at the internal combustion engine, and the supply is coming back because the manufacturers are bringing new car to market, but actually the supply of used car dropped significantly 3 years ago, and therefore there's less car coming into the market. So as the chip shortage goes away, I don't think we're going to see that same we're not expecting an RV crash on internal combustion engine. We expect that to go back to the new normal as before, but we are expecting pressure to come under battery electric vehicles.
Depreciation asset.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another topic, looking also to our time together, I had some interesting discussions with some dealers about their turn.
Yeah.
And I always say, I think a turn is normal of 12.
Yeah.
Hey, you have to turn every car every month.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it makes no sense whatsoever.
That would be a wonderful situation for a lot of dealers.
It should be.
Yeah.
Right? If you are in America and they are all talking about 14, 15, 16 times turns, etc. And we went to Dallas. We had a visit at the Car Max.
Yeah.
They had 700 cars on the lot, and they actually are going to sell 800 of them every month.
Yeah.
So it is not impossible.
It's doable.
And if you ask them about their pricing strategy, they are saying we are going to price the car to sell today.
Yeah.
Not to sell tomorrow, but to sell today. There's a big difference. But on the other hand, and I saw some INDICATA data from you as well, is that in the Netherlands, and INDICATA proves that in their in the dashboard, is that we have cars in high demand with high velocity.
Yep.
Giving them a price of 98% of the market price
and less.
Instead of giving them a higher price to turn them maybe not so quickly, but just normal quick, and doing the opposite with the low demand cars with a slow velocity. But then for a sudden we are asking 105% of the price. How does that come? How can we teach dealers, independents with INDICATA data, that they have to change their dynamics?
So we look at it in a couple of ways. Firstly, we've done a lot of work just recently looking at the correlation between market day supply and dealer stock turn. So we will go into a dealer and we will look at all their sales for a period of time, 1 year, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. And we'll look at that data and we look at it and we categorize it by the market day supply. This is the market attractiveness that we've got. And what we see is exactly the elements that you talk about. It's fascinating that we look at vehicles which have got less than 60-day market day supply, which are the attractive vehicles in the market. And we look at a dealer, and when they buy these cars less than 60 market day supply, then they will stock turn at around 18, 19, 20. I've seen 30 times stock turn. on the freshest, nicest, most wonderful stock.
Yeah.
And I
Turn,
look at
turn.
I look at the pricing that they're realizing for that, and that they're realizing market average or below on that stock.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, what's happening? And then equally, we then look at that same stock.
Yeah, but if you are going from 30 to 15 and asking then 102% of the price, you are making better growth, better margins, and still have a great turn.
It's really interesting because the other thing that we've looked at in that is how focused dealers are at getting that kind of 104, 105% of the market. And we I'll look at dealers and I'll look at their average stock position. And on these fresh cars, they will price them at 102, 103. Actually, even without data, there's some guys out there who can just go, I've got feel it's and on average, their better cars are slightly higher price and whatever. What we do next is we look at the distribution of pricing. And we see that actually the proportion of cars that they've got, whilst the average is, let's say 102, they'll have a massive amount of stock down at 92, 93, 94, 95, and they'll have a massive amount of stock up at 115, 180. And it's like, okay, so what happens?
Yeah.
Well, it's really attractive stock. It's great. But 115% of the market ain't going to move.
No.
So what actually you end up doing is you end up taking all the cars that are down at 92, 93, 94, and you spin them really quickly.
Yeah.
So whilst your average price might be 102 in terms of your stock, your sale price is coming through at 96. And so you're getting high stock turn and losing massive profit opportunities, but allowing other cars to stick around. So we look, when we work with a dealer, we'll go in, we'll look at, firstly, do they have the right correlation between market day supply and their average pricing? But we'll also spend a lot of focus to make sure that individual cars are right priced. And if we get individual cars right priced in a very narrow band, that's the point where the dealer has control of their destiny. Because then they can set a pricing strategy that says, okay, I'm going to start at this price, I'm going to focus these cars at this price, these cars at this price, and they actually realize that price overall. So it's not just a case of saying, oh, it's on average my good cars are in a good place. It's making sure that every good car is in the right place.
Yeah.
And every bad car is either A, you buy it right and then price it at a much lower price, or more importantly, make the decision not even to bring it into stock. That if it's coming in as a trade,
if you have it, move it.
If you have it, move it. Because these cars, when we look at vehicles that are over 120 market day supply, we're seeing stock turns at kind of like 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. No sense. And therefore, when you get the blended average in, you're coming at 4 times stock turn. You're coming at 3 times stock turn. And guess what? That's death for a dealer. That's death for a dealer.
So to end, to end on that, for the 99% of the dealers, independents who has no gut feeling for this one, they can use the data of INDICATA, right?
I think even those that have got gut feeling for the market, actually they can understand on how, again, it's sort of right, but they still, it's getting this really tight, narrow band. So for me,
also you want the whole 100%.
I want the whole market. Of course I do. But no, I look at certain dealers who we've worked with where we've gone in, we've put these pricing strategies in, and we've doubled profitability in a very, very short period of time. Okay. And so from that perspective, we're very comfortable that we can go in, we can do an initial consultancy and get to a point where we can identify some opportunities really to make some very quick wins overall.
Andy, thank you. Thank you for this conversation.
It's been my pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure.
My pleasure as well. Thank you for coming over. Last question. If people want to have more data or have a conversation with you, how can they in contact with you? Through LinkedIn or?
They can contact me directly through LinkedIn. If you go on to indicata.com, indicata.nl, then we've also got all the contact details of our local teams, etc. So, any route that's there. But feel free to contact me via LinkedIn as well.
Oké, thank you. Dit was het voor vandaag. Natuurlijk hebben we volgende week weer een nieuwe gast met dezelfde missie. Samen de online automotive beter maken. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Dank u wel voor het luisteren naar de DCDW-podcast van Paul de Vries met de missie om de online automotive beter te maken. Vond u deze podcast interessant? Abonneer dan meteen via Spotify, Soundcloud of iTunes. En deel deze podcast via LinkedIn met uw netwerk. De DCDW-podcast van Paul de Vries wordt mede mogelijk gemaakt door de volgende partners: Marktplaats, Goldrip, Carmen Automotive BDC, Vindio, Used Car Controller, Vinnacles en tweedehands.be.